mostly did oil paintings and printmaking. But when I got to CCAD, I knew I wanted to explore new materials. So I thought back to my own experiences, which were as a child mostly sewing and embroidery and that sort of thing, and thought that would be nice to be able to bring that into my work. And actually, I found many ways to incorporate it that actually makes sense for what I do. The main influence for this piece was a lot of studying that I had been doing on the era of Romanticism and the whole idea of the sublime and looking for beauty in nature, but not just the beauty. There's a whole package where you have beauty and awe, and nature isn't just always still. It's not simple. There are some terrifying aspects too. And in the Romantic era, they were always trying to capture this whole idea of the sublime. You have like the Hudson School River painters that were doing these giant, large-scale landscape paintings. And it occurred to me that sometimes trying to capture the sublime, it's hard to get it into the frame. And once you do, it just becomes really decorative. So I decided to start working with materials that were decorative, like the embroidery. I do this by machine. I drop the feed dogs and I literally draw with my machine. I do draw a lot of this out ahead of time. I'll go out in the woods and sketch, or sometimes for my photos, and then I'll draw them out on my machine. This one in color. And I also have some crochet work in there too. That's very traditional, very decorative. And I thought that would speak to that whole idea of the decorative. And one of the ideas that really got this going was when I was reading about Romanticism, I read about something called the clawed glass that people in an era would take out to the landscape with them to view the landscape. And it was a convex piece of glass that was mirrored, and it was smoky brown, so that when they would look at the landscape through it, it would look antique, like an old painting. So, and it wasn't just painters that was using this, it was also tourists. And I thought, wow, what a funny idea to go out and look at something so wonderful, and then you have to turn your back on it to use it, and use that to encapsulate this experience into this little piece of glass. Which in a way, I mean, we do that with our cameras nowadays and with our phones, but I had that feeling of doing that with the frames, inside and outside of the frame, for this piece. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I have a question about the claw glass. If you know, when the person using it, you say, has to turn their back on the environment that they're looking at because it's a mirror.
It's a mirror. Mm-hmm.
So do you know, does the person then show up in that same view that they're seeing?
Well, I would imagine, I had trouble finding pictures of anyone using it because it was so long ago.
Sure.
But I would imagine the artists, I read, some would set it on something so they can paint from it. But a tourist, I guess, would just hold it out to the side. Kind of like you would take a picture with your phone and not get yourself in it. Yeah. But I thought, what an interesting idea to take something that you're already in front of and try to reproduce it already. Yeah. So, but we do that all the time. So.
Why did you choose to include like all the little frame pieces as well?
The frames, I was thinking about that whole idea of trying to keep nature framed and still keep that feeling, that sense of awe that these romantics were talking about in nature, and how difficult that really is, and being inside and outside the frame. What's in the frame it's sort of scaled down and sugared up a little, I guess, as compared to what we really see out there. It's an easier way to adjust something if you put it in a frame. I'm not saying anything bad about anything in a frame because I love to paint, but that was the idea behind this. And it's sort of that frustration too of trying to depict something, and then once you get it on your canvas or whatever you're using, you never quite get the sense of the original thing. So that was kind of where it started from.
I have a comment. I really love, I know this was incidental, but the air from the vent on the floor slowly gets the installation to move. Mm-hmm. And so you had mentioned where it's like, if you're doing a landscape painting, you're creating an object that doesn't really feel like you're actually there. It looks like what it is. But this installation with it coming out of the frame and then slowly swaying in the breeze, I think does a really good job of capturing the feeling of being in nature.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, it tries to create that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. That's nice to think about for the future.
Could you talk a little bit about this piece over here? It's kind of less full in the installation, so what was your process on this?
This one, I was sitting at my kitchen table and I had put a little bird feeder outside so I could photograph these birds coming and going in the morning, and it sounds really simple, but I'm sitting there reading the newspaper and looking out the window and seeing this, little garden, the trees, the birds and the trees coming and going, and I'm reading the paper with all these horrific things that are going on. I thought, what a bizarre feeling it is to be on the inside and to know that all these other things are going on, and I've got this little peaceful scene outside. And I kind of got the idea that, you just have this one thin frame of glass between us, but that's not even true. You're always very close to that other side of the rest of the world catastrophe. We can't think like that all the time, or we'd never get out of bed. But that's where I was coming from when I started that. And I know when you look at it, you probably would never think of the catastrophic side of that, but that's what the impetus was behind that.
I was going to ask you a question, make a comment about the event, the same relative comment that came up. But I just wonder if you've ever encountered before the fabric moving, or these, even it seems as though like bodies being in a space and looking at or moving past something is going to cause them to move, so there's that like nice interaction, or potentially nice, maybe not, maybe it's catastrophic, but some interaction that happens.
I did actually, the piece I did for my final MFA exhibit was, it was 16 by 16 and it hung from the ceiling, so I think it was 12 feet high, but it was made so that people could walk through it and then it would move because of people moving by it, because these are just silk. They just move really easily. And that effect I really liked. And also the other thing that comes with that when you have it in the middle of the room is you get these shadows of people inside your work. So on the wall you've got the work and the people in the shadow interacting with it, and that was really a nice thing. I'd like to do more of that, but you have to find big spaces. And
yeah, there's something that's that unintended interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question. Like when you're composing and getting ready to like put something together, like what's your process like? Do you start hanging things up and moving them around and then decide, or do you start with like a sketch of what you're going to do and you kind of have it in your head beforehand? Like what's your method, I guess, of composing?
Probably the first one. It's not very organized, really. And I think that's why this sort of thing works for me, because I kind of work piecemeal on it. I actually start from drawings, and sometimes I'll do a really detailed drawing just to start it off, to get my brain going and decide what I'm going to do. And then I kind of put that aside, and I sometimes will on the wall stick the drawings. And then I'll start stitching things up and trying them out, and I edit, take things out, put them in. But I started hanging things off the grid in my room at home that I work from, and just rearranging constantly up and down the ladder. And yeah, it's very piecemeal. I just kind of put a piece here and say, oh, now I need this, and it's fun that way for me. It keeps me going.
Is there like a feeling you get when it's done that you know it's done, or is there like a certain goal you have, and once you reach that goal, then your piece is done?
I always think I could add more, so I don't know if they're ever really done. I feel like I could take it home and make it much bigger, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I want to move on to the next thing. So
would you say they're more like works in progress in some regard?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Do you ever exhibit an installation at one place and then keep working on it and then exhibit it in a different state at another?
I haven't yet, because I just started doing these years ago. But I have, one that put the same piece in a different place, but not that yet.
Okay.
I like that idea, actually. So they never really come back in the same form if they do.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.